Welcome, everyone, to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. She's an author, she's an NLP master practitioner, and she is a movement coach, a movement health coach. So please welcome to the episode, welcome to this podcast, Miss Alejandra Diaz Mercado. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Joel, for having me. Great pronunciation of my name.
I was working on my Spanish, right? So.
Yeah, it's all about the R's, right?
Absolutely. So you actually came to my attention a few months ago when your brother Rodrigo was a guest on the podcast. So when we were done, he said, "Man, you got to connect with my sister. You guys will get along great. I think you have a lot of value to offer each other." She just released a book, so you should definitely get a copy of that. I think you'll enjoy it. And she would be a great guest on the podcast. So we've managed to do all three of those things. So thank you to him. And I actually have a little message from him for you here. So a little surprise. So your brother Rodrigo, I asked him, I said, "What do you love most about your sister? Like what makes her unique?" So this is what he said. He said, I love that she's always seen this world beyond what everyone else has decided to see. So you're always kind of forging your own path. Everyone in her life told her life was a certain way, and she decided not to believe that. So there's a mix of ambition and stubbornness and good things. You got to be stubborn in certain areas. He says that's what makes her amazing. Now I really understand what she saw back then. So maybe he couldn't see what you saw, and you paved the way for him. And you protected that, with your spirit and the joy of life and all those things. I admire that she trusted her inner voice despite what the world said. And he said, "Here are the top qualities that I love about my sister, that she's creative, compassionate, loving, fun, thoughtful, kind, magical." And he's a magician, so he knows magic. And she's unlimited. So a few kind words from your brother, which is nice, right?
Wow, Joel, this is so unexpected, and it comes as a beautiful surprise that you both put together for me. Wow, I'm emotional and speechless. Thank you so much for that surprise.
You're very welcome. So let's go back to the beginning. You grew up in Mexico. So what was life like in Mexico, and how do you appear as a Canadian?
Well, yes, I grew up in Mexico City, so right at the heart of the country. And my memory is full of surrealistic experiences. It is a city that never sleeps. And it is surreal because no matter where you look at, there are impossible buildings and nature intertwined and color and art. And it's just so full of life and juxtaposition that I think that became part of who I am growing up. Like it just intermeshed with my spirit, my heart, my mind. And I had a beautiful childhood, very nurtured. I went to private schools. That is how I ended up becoming a master in the English language. Well, there's always so much to learn, and I'm still practicing. Yes, but it was thanks to my parents and that I started studying English since kindergarten. And then after graduation, that time in that moment in time when you start thinking, I started thinking of what I wanted to do with my life, and I was really good in any area that I would have chosen. I would have excelled, but I wanted to study art. And art brought me to Canada. there was always a certainty in my heart that I was going to leave Mexico, and I couldn't explain it back then. And right now, the best way to describe it is I just knew it inside of me. And so I knew I had to leave Mexico. And right now, I am a proud Canadian. I have a dual citizenship. I am a proud Canadian, and I've been living here since 2004, 2003. Yes. So.
See, you actually trusted your intuition. A lot of people, it's like there are messages that are delivered to themselves through their dreams or their subconscious, but most people don't trust themselves enough to follow that intuition. So where do you think that confidence came from, where you actually believed in yourself and trusted that intuition to change countries? Like that's a big deal.
Yes, absolutely. You are very right. It is scary because I'm sure a lot of people listen and can pick up on those messages from their mind or from the universe or from God or from their heart. And some of those messages, like my brother said, they were against everything I was told. I was told to, the expectation was to stay in Mexico, get married, have kids. And I completely went against that expectation. And you know what, it was so strong and so clear for me. And I didn't even see it as courage. There was just no doubt in my mind that that's the path I needed to take for myself. And the older I get, the wiser I get, hopefully, I'm starting to understand that no one else can tell me how to live my life. It doesn't matter who it is, because no one knows what it means to live inside of me. So, but back then I couldn't have explained it to you. I was just stubborn, like my brother said. I think it's part of, if you like astrology, the Aries sign. But I'm also, there's this just certainty inside of me that I need to follow that inner intuition, that inner guide.
Yeah, they say that intuition uh, already knows what you have yet to figure out. So your intuition already knows what you have yet to kind of process or figure out. So you have to trust in that intuition. I tend to act on my intuition. I act with impulse, but it almost always works out. It's like I have something, navigating me, and I just trust in that intuition that the message has been delivered, and things tend to work out for the best. And where people have trouble is if they're not doing what they think they should be doing with their lives, if they're making the wrong decisions, if they're eating the wrong things and they know that they shouldn't, if they're spending money on things they know they shouldn't, if they're in a job that they hate and they're just not walking away even though they know they should, they stop trusting themselves to make the right decision. So when their intuition tells them something, they don't trust themselves enough to know if that would be the right call to make. So I think that's amazing that you trust that intuition. And if more people did that, I think the world would be a better place.
Well, the way you describe it sounds like intuition is irrational. Like,
Sometimes.
I would, yes, and it's emotional and irrational, and it's this knowing, like all knowing part of you, part of me. Everybody has it. That if you get too caught up in your mind thinking of the shoots, the shouldn'ts, the structures that the way you've been told you have to do, that is where there is that fight. The conscious mind, the mind can, it's almost so mathematical, so structured, that it doesn't make sense for the mind to follow the intuition, because it's irrational, emotional, impulsive, and it's just completely different worlds. And that's part of what fascinates me about the human experience.
You talked about Mexico City having such amazing art and artwork. So you got some nice art behind you. You're actually a painter. This is a painting that you did. Can you explain? I know it's hard to explain art, like it's more of a feeling, but what does that represent behind you? How did that piece come to be?
Well, as an artist, I'm going to challenge you, Joel. And I'd like you to tell me first, before I tell you the secret behind the painting, how does this painting make you feel, or what does it represent for you in your own personal experience?
See, as a musician, I get the same thing with songs. Hey, what is this song about? And it's like, well, what are you getting out of it, right? It's different for both of us. Let me see. So this is random, but this is what comes to me. There's a Blink 182 album that has that color palette on it. So the first thing that comes to mind is like a feeling of familiarity based on an album I had of Blink 182
Mhm.
back in the day. Um, what else do I get out of it? I love the colors. So I'm gonna be honest. I just sold my house and I'm in a completely empty house. Like there's nothing in my house. So it's just like floors. So I love that you got something going on there and you got some artwork and you have colors because I just have, this drab background. So that's what I get out of it. First thoughts.
Oh, it sounds like you're craving some color in your life, some artwork in your apartment.
Yeah, yeah. The new place. Um, I've been reading some Jordan Peterson books, and he says you should make at least one room in your home as beautiful as possible, because beauty is a pathway to transcendence. That beauty is everlasting, and it shows what's possible and all those things. So I have my new place in Ottawa. So I'm moving from Toronto, Mississauga to Ottawa. My place is I get it on May 1st. So I've already started to plan out how to make the whole place beautiful. So I've bought artwork for it, and so I'm excited. So this is all gray and drab because there's nothing anywhere, and your painting, makes me feel good. I feel like I need more of that in my life.
Oh, good. I'm glad I've inspired you because you've gone through quite a change yourself. And so, well, yeah, that's, the art is here. And if our listeners, the viewer here can see the painting for a moment before I tell you what it is about, I'd like them to think of what it makes them feel, what it reminds them of. Because as a creator, before being any of my other designations, first and foremost, I'm an artist. And my one of my purposes in this life, I feel I can feel it in my intuition, is to create, but to create for others to experience themselves in my creations. So this painting being an example of that. And so it this painting represents the the human experience and the emotion of what being human means to me. You have, the breakdowns, the darkness, this heavy emotions that uh, it is almost taboo to talk about. We have started to open up as a society to have the conversations on rage, grief, anger, sadness, all of those dark emotions, but we're still very young as a society, being open and honest about what that does to someone. We're very good with the positive emotions. We know what to do with them. Whenever you or me or anyone is feeling an uplifting emotion, they celebrate, food, drink, call your people, but there is very few understanding of what to do with the negative emotions. But to me, instead of, I want to go beyond the label of positive or negative, they are simply colors in a painting. The starker the contrast, the more powerful the experience, and the bigger the opportunity for discernment that you, my listener, have to know where to stand. So the bigger that gap, the starker the contrast, the better the discernment capabilities you and I have as a human. That's what this
There's a
painting.
lot going on in that painting. That's very deep. That's just not paint splashed on a canvas. There's some
Yes.
meaning going on there. So you and your brother are both you're both awesome, you're ambitious, you're positive, you're inspiring. How much do you credit your parents and the way you were raised with both of you turning out that way? I mean, if there's just one of you like that, then maybe it's the individual, but to have two of you that turned out like that. Any credit to the parents?
Oh, absolutely. I want to give them a ton of credit here. I
What
believe
are
we.
their names so I can practice more Spanish
Oh,
pronunciation?
my mom's name is Perla Lilia,
Oh wow. Okay.
and my dad's name is Cici. It's Alejandro. Sometimes
Okay.
people call me Alejandro because they it is confusing the name, and the Lady Gaga song song. Alejandro
That
helped with
helps. Yeah.
pronunciation. Yeah, yeah. But yes, my name takes after my dad's name, Alejandra from Alejandro.
You know what? So you were saying, oh, I did a decent job pronouncing your name at the start. What's funny is the last interview that I did before this was with a big business mogul woman from the US, and her name was Alejandra. So the only two Alejandras I know, I interviewed back to back, just happened that way. So I had a little bit of practice saying the name for the last interview. So.
Oh wow, how interesting that coincidence too. Eh?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so random. But anyways, you can continue about your parents. I just wanted to hear the names to get that Spanish in there.
Yes. Well, my mom Perla, she was a source of power, strength, integrity. Growing up, I always felt inside of me because I don't think, and this is where we can start discussing a bit of perception and reality, right? Which I talk about in my book. But I don't think she imposed a way of being on me. But growing up, I perceived that the expectation from her for me was excellence and perfection. So there I was, the straight A student, winning all the awards, the scholarships. I was always head to head with my best friend. She was also a perfectionist. And so my mom just symbolizes this incredible strength and work ethic, and that is part of who I am. And on the other side, my dad Alejandro, he in Mexico people say tiene estrella, which means he has a star, he has charisma, he had this light, he was a natural leader. And as a physical education teacher, he also owned his own business, and he would take kids out to camping experiences, to nature, to interacting and playing games out in open spaces, exploring nature. And so my dad represents that part of me, and he is part of me too, that charisma, that just light, just happiness. And they both kept my world magical, safe. I feel like I grew up in a bubble, in a magical bubble, which, at some moment in my life, I had to discern and weed out the naiveness in me and really face the realities of the world. But it was such a gift. So I credit them big time for the person that I am today.
That's great that you have that clarity on the strengths and qualities of each of your parents. It sounds like you've actually thought about it before. Like you have this clear distinction of each parent and the gifts they gave you. So that's awesome. That sense of awareness. So you're a movement health coach. So for our listeners that are hearing that term, movement health coach, you hear of a fitness coach or some more generic terms. So can you describe exactly what that is, a movement health coach?
Well, great question. My listener will be most familiar with me thinking of me as a personal trainer, but that label becomes attached with someone that teaches people how to lift weights in a gym, right? Or that kicks their ass in a workout. And so I am so much more than that, and that's why I've modified the label a little bit to allow me to open up the conversation with potential clients. And so what I do as a movement health coach is I first of all get a really clear as I can understanding of who my client is, what are their specific needs, because not everyone wants to lift weights and not everyone wants to stretch, and there is also what they want and what they need.
Mm.
So
Not the same thing, right?
not the same
Yeah.
thing, yes. And often they're a person's idea of how they should move, it's a limited version of what they have been taught. So what I do as a movement health coach is I help you explore the birthright that your body has to move in certain ways, the difference in wavelengths, sensations. I help them understand pain as a form of communication from their bodies. It's also connected to intuition. So pain for me simply means pay attention in the now. And at an initial stage, you can separate pain in good kind of pain and bad kind of pain. And then on top of that, there is another layer where you can start describing pain with a sensation. Is it sharp, like an ice pick is poking your body? Is it cold? Is it warm? Because all of those experiences tell you something about what is happening in your body, short term, midterm, and long term. So that is what I do with my clients. And that is why, I just changed the label so that I can have the opportunity to open this conversation with my clients.
So you weren't always into fitness and health. Um, you went through a pretty dramatic physical transformation. Can you share the story of how that got started and you entering a bodybuilding competition? Maybe share that so people have some context of how you
Yeah,
became who you are today.
well, absolutely. And this ties also to my parents. So my mom was also a physical education teacher, but from her family, there is a big artistic creative force. And from my dad's family, there is the movement, the sports, some pre-Olympic and Olympic athletes from my dad's side of the family. So growing up, I was exposed to the two. I had the two inside of me, two seemingly unmixable disciplines. And I played sports. I played national level volleyball during high school in Mexico City. I did ballet for 10 years. And then I came to Canada to study art. So, see, it's almost like I jumped from side to side on the two disciplines. And when I graduated, again, in the naive part of me learning about the world, I was very excited to have my best job. It was as a production artist, sort of like a graphic artist for a company that produced lanyards, marketing materials for events. And, my work ethic just was shining through. It was clear to the owners of the company since the beginning. And in the world that I was taught, uh, I thought, well, the expectation was that the harder and the better I work, the more opportunities of growth I would have. But instead of having that, what happened is the more work I was given to do without any growth opportunity. So after a year, I was performing the role of four people.
And
And
you
I
weren't
was,
getting paid for four people, were
no,
you?
I wasn't. And the two attempts I had of communicating with the owners, it was met with anger and resistance, and that ended up causing a lot of confusion inside of me, because again, the world that I thought that I was taught, the harder you work, the more you grow, it was becoming destroyed. It started undoing me from the inside. So I started spiraling down into a major breakdown, and I was food was my comfort. I became addicted. I developed a serious addiction to food. There were some nights that it was 12 o'clock at night and I couldn't sleep. As you and I know, and there's a lot of information now coming up to the surface about how um, food is like a drug, and the chemical reactions it causes in the brain and inside the body, that it's quite shocking and disturbing, to say the least. And I would beg my husband at 12 o'clock at night to drive me to Tim Hortons to buy two bagels. And it wasn't until I ate the bagels that I managed to sleep.
Hmm.
And then it was a very dark moment in my life. I ended up quitting my job and not working for 6 months, and it was complete decay. It was complete darkness. It was a very, very bad time. I hated myself, and the people around me were there. I could hear their voices, I could see them, but it was like I was submerged in a thick fog. And yeah, it's a very dark moment in my life, but I'm thankful for it, because without it I wouldn't have become the person that I am. So I acknowledge the strength of who I was in that moment, even though in that moment I felt weak and worthless. But right now I can acknowledge the strength that I had in that moment to go through that experience, so that I can discern, so that I can have this experience of light and dark in my life. And yeah, that ended up taking me to competing in a bodybuilding show has to
How did
listen.
you even hear about this competition?
Okay, you're gonna love this. This is a fun story. So I realized that it, I wasn't just being darkness to myself. My darkness was starting to pull others into my hole. And that is when that realization, I was not okay with that. One thing is to pull myself into my own darkness, but another one is to cause those who I love the most to fall into it. So I started, my husband at that time owned a small workout facility, and this was 11 years ago. So it they weren't as popular or as prominent as they were, about a year or two ago before the pandemic started, right? So he owned a small facility, and I decided to start becoming a better version of myself. But think of the absolute worst that I've ever been. I started to take the small step of just showing up at the gym and trying to complete an 11-minute CrossFit workout, which was ridiculous because CrossFit, at that moment, it was very intense. An 11-minute workout, giving your 100% from not having done anything. Yes, it felt horrible. It was so painful in my body. But on one of those times that I showed up for the workout, I saw there was the wife of one of my husband's clients there. And I swear I saw what I described to be a statue of a Greek goddess that had stepped down from her pedestal into the gym. And I knew these people existed. I had seen them in magazines, in fitness magazines, but one thing is seeing them in the two-dimensional flat magazine, and another one is seeing the person like it's real. I could not believe my eyes.
In
And
the magazine, you think, oh, maybe this is photoshopped, like, is this real? But then you saw them.
yes, yes, like that. And that is, it's so interesting because the aspect of interacting online with someone in person, I'm an in-person person. It's completely different. It changes you in other ways. So seeing this woman in person shocked me to the core. And then fast forward a couple months later, we had started building a small relationship, her and me, just chatting with each other. And one day she told me, "You're so beautiful. What are you doing to yourself?" And there was this ego part of me inside of me that went like, oh, why is she saying that? How she dares to say that? But that was inside me, inside my head. That was the first moment that a part of me started listening to someone else. And so four there were three other friends that were working out in the gym that decided to sign up for a fitness show, and she offered to train me. I accepted. I said yes. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I just knew that if she told me to crawl on the mud and eat grass, I would do it, because just looking at how the past 2 years of my life have been compared to the possibility that I could be like her. And that's again the other aspect of my ego saying, if I had her body, what wouldn't I do in this life? What couldn't I get? Who couldn't I, I could be anything I wanted. So that is what sparked the desire to compete. Yeah. It's
And the like I've seen pictures. So the end result is you lost a bunch of weight, you gained a bunch of muscle. You were legit shredded at like competition level. So what were the numbers? Like, did you lose 20 pounds? Like what happened?
so I am 5'3", and my usual weight is around between 125 and 130. So before the transformation, I had hit close to 155. The the problem is that it was close to half of my body weight, like 50% body fat. So that is very it's just a lot of body fat in a small frame. And I'm also hypermobile. Like if I show you my elbow,
Oh
hypermobile means
wow.
just after it.
You'd be a good UFC fighter because you'd never tap out in a submission because it wouldn't
I
even hurt. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I just wiggle my way out. But that makes my tissue very unstable as well. So carrying very little muscle, a lot of fat, my posture was starting to curl in and decay. And so then for my first show, which by the way, I hated it. I hated that experience. And I, I swore I would never compete again. But I went from almost 150 to 117 in a period of 4 months. So knowing better, I would say that it's very extreme. I do not recommend it. Now I have a different approach of honoring the body and understanding, the natural process of change. But back then I was also younger. So, a young body can take a lot. So I did it. And then it took me 3 years to build a good amount of muscle in a natural way, for it to look like I was a higher level competitor. And my competition weight is usually around 111 and 9% body fat, between 9 and 13% body fat. Um, and there are other considerations as a woman to keep into account, because the body naturally likes to sit between 17 and 25% body fat. And now that's open to big debate, right? There's a lot of imbalances due to the misuse of food and nature that we have nowadays. But yeah, those are the numbers, because I'm sure you and our listener is curious to know. Yeah.
See, I've seen the pictures, so like I know how insane the transformation was. So without the pictures, I was trying to have our listeners get some kind of a an idea of what that looked like or what that meant. We're going to give your social media info later, so people can go on there, and I know you have pictures, so they could
Oh,
they could
absolutely.
see as well. So you mentioned that you absolutely hated that first competition and the process, and it reminds me of a quote that says, what you need most will be found where you least want to look. So it's like you hated it, but that's what started the transformation of becoming the person that you are today, and of getting your health where it needs to be, and physically getting where you need to be. So that's the quote that popped up when you talked about hating it despite it being good for you.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. Yes, and it was not a nice experience, but very thankful again for that experience as well.
So we mentioned social media, and again, we'll give those links afterwards. When I see your social media, I see that you're very active, posting, but also physically active. So you're always doing these rhythmic body movements. This is known as animal flow, I believe. What is that? How is that good for the body? Like, I'm sure it's good for flexibility and building muscle, because it's like using your own body weight, and being present, all those things. And how did you hear about this? Me seeing you do it is the way that I'm hearing about this. I've never seen this before. So what is animal flow?
Yes, and I'm sure when you saw it, it looks like a weird wiggly dancing way, right?
I
Like,
thought you were the world's slowest dancer. I thought you were like just dancing in slow motion, but you'll enlighten us to what this is.
so to someone looking at animal flow for the first time, at someone performing or practicing animal flow, it's going to look like yoga and breakdancing got married and had a baby. That would be animal flow, to put it that way. Animal flow is a discipline that started around 2010. The creator is Mike Fitch. And over the last 11 years, the discipline has continued to evolve, adding movements. Even from the beginning, the science behind it, which is what attracted to me, what was most attractive for me, is not just a cool way of moving or a fancy way of working out. There is a solid scientific base that relates to fascia. Fascia is the connective tissue that holds everything together inside the body. So instead of looking at the body in separate pieces like bones, muscles, organs, or even the muscle divisions, this discipline acknowledges the interconnectivity between all of it, and the way what our birthright as humans is, how we should move to maintain flow and balance within the body. So again, that is one of the things that attracted to me the most about it. And I came across the discipline in 2015, which was the same year I competed at the Arnold's, from Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the biggest bodybuilding shows in the world. I had come from competing at the Arnold's in the States. And that year, I had also won a company-wide award in Good Life Fitness. So they paid for my attendance to the CanFit Pro conference. And I had a couple hours where I hadn't scheduled anything, and I was looking at the seminars, and I read this thing called Animal Flow. And so, because I had a background in theater as well, I know it's almost like I've done it all, right? Uh, I said, well, if I can kill 2 hours and what they're going to make me do is crawl and scream like an animal, I'm totally okay with that. Like, it would be fun for me. That's what I thought. And so I walked in, and it was this huge empty conference room, and one man is standing in the middle. And I walked up to him and I asked him if I was in the right place. And he said, yes, you are. This is the Animal Flow seminar. And he asked me why I was interested about it. And I said that I was looking for something different. I've been in the bodybuilding world for 5 years. And even though it feels really good to work out in just a simple way for me, I was a little bit bored with it, and I wanted to explore, gymnastic style disciplines. And so this man, Barry, he listened to me ramble on for 10 minutes, and he was just smiling, and he ended up saying, well, I'm glad you're here. And then the seminar starts, and he is none other than Mike Fitch, the creator of Animal Flow. And he shared his story, very similar to mine. And there were about 25, 30 attendees. And that was the first time I experienced Animal Flow. And from then on, I've become, I am now a regional leader, and this is a worldwide company. And I am so passionate about it. Another way to describe it, it's, a push-up is a plank in motion. The Animal Flow is a series of planks in motion in multiple angles, directions, speeds, intentions. And so here in it allows the individual that practices it a deeper understanding of their body, the connection of the body, the mind, and even opens up other experiences such as emotion or proprioception and spirituality. To some of us, for me, it also has been a spiritual experience. So it's very unique to the individual, but yeah, you can tell I am in love with this discipline. It's also a way of doing art for me.
You mentioned planks and planks in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a confession for you. I had never done a plank in my entire life up until I've been doing hot yoga for a long time. And there's one day where I wanted to do hot yoga, and the studio I go to, the only available class was actually like a Pilates class. So I'm like, oh, Pilates, like, oh, this will be easy. So I went to do Pilates, and it's just me and a bunch of women in this Pilates class. And it was super awkward. I felt out of place. And the Pilates ended up being super difficult. I thought it would be easy. And in the Pilates, one of the steps is doing a plank. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. I mean, it's just holding yourself in place for a little bit. And man, planks are so hard to do. And I looked around, and there were old women that were killing me with the planks. They were doing awesome. I couldn't plank at all. So, anyways, the talking about planks in motion. Maybe a plank in motion, I'd be better than just a plank holding still. But
That brought some good old memories for you, Joel.
yeah, that was my first and only plank and my first and only Pilates class. So outside of fitness, you're also an NLP master practitioner. So for our listeners hearing NLP for the first time, that's neuro linguistic programming. What is that?
The best way to define it is the study of human excellence. And let's go a layer deeper into that. If you break down the word neuro from neurons, which is could be a label for the mind, human consciousness, linguistic, language, because language defines our world. Language creates, language destroys. It's the act of creation in the moment. And programming is the command, being in command of your world, like reprogramming a computer, changing the programming in the mind, in the consciousness, in the language, so that you can experience the reality that you want to create in your life. Yeah, it's the
Wow.
best way to describe it. The word says it all.
And you're a master practitioner of it. So how does someone become a master practitioner versus someone that just practices it?
Well, a master practitioner means I took the what you would call the level two. The first one is neuro linguistic practitioner, and the second one is neuro linguistic master practitioner. And it was the format that I took it. I graduated in 2017 from my mastery. It was a 2 week from 9 to 6 course in presence with my instructor, Suzanne Longstreet. And she's been a powerful guide in my life. I met her because I was looking for a coach, a mastery coach. I had just left a Good Life Fitness and I knew I was about to start my business, and I didn't want to do it on my own. I've been very stubborn for most of my life, done things by myself. So I wanted someone to guide me. And that's the first time. And you know what? Because my clients for 10 years had invested in me as their guide, and I saw the magic in their lives. Like they were telling me the before and after the experiences that they've had. I started wanting that experience for myself. So I ended up hiring Suzanne. Well, she guided me into taking the course. This is a woman with such a great insight. And she said, you're going to get more out of the process if you take the courses and become a coach, and I'll be there for you, as opposed to you just hiring me as a coach. So I am very thankful for that piece of advice. Yeah.
So one of the most famous practitioners of NLP is Tony Robbins. That's probably how I became familiar with the term. Um, is he a good representative of or representation of what NLP is? I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Robbins and his teachings and what he does, but is that a good kind of overview of, yeah, that's NLP, or is there somewhere else we should be looking? Other leaders that do it, or books to read on it? I have one NLP book that a friend gave me that I haven't read yet. So I have it within my universe. There's a book that's ready to be read. So maybe I'll pick that up.
Fantastic. And great question. I would say the answer to me is both yes and no. Some people love Tony Robbins, some people hate Tony Robbins. In fact, I had a client I worked with last year. The moment I mentioned NLP, she went like this. No, 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 no. I know all about it. I don't like Tony Robbins. And I said, well, Tony Robbins is an individual expressing his individual way of practicing this discipline. If you were to walk into a gym and you saw 10 different personal trainers, would you assume that they all work the same way? And even if you sat down and observed them, you would notice that each of them has a unique way of teaching. It's the same with NLP. Tony Robbins is his own person, his own expression of NLP, in so unique and so different than who I am as an NLP practitioner. So the best, the best. That's why the answer is yes. The answer is no. To some people, that's going to be a good thing, and to some others, no. So when my clients, well, a potential client comes to me, I encourage them to research, to see how others do it, and then to listen to me, and then see what resonates with them. And if I am the right coach for them, then it's going to work out. If I am not, it's not going to work out. But it is more about the coach, the person practicing the NLP, less about the method, because NLP is a collection of methods that branch out from different areas of psychology, psychiatry, hypnosis. So it is a collection of methods and systems. And that's just mathematics, right? Then you bring the human factor, the emotional factor, the coaching factor, and the thing that was the same thing, no matter what, becomes so unique depending on who is teaching, who is practicing NLP, and who the client is as well. So it's individual process.
I guess the good thing about Tony Robbins, you know, preaching NLP is that it at least raised the awareness. So people have heard of NLP and then maybe they're looking for more, which is where they find someone else like you. So there's always the pros and the cons of everything. Um, I have a book in front of me here. So this is a book that you released last year. So this is Energy in Motion: How to Unleash Your Mind and Take Action Now. So that's the book. That's what it looks like. I've read it. I gave it a great review online. I actually have a little note in here. It says, "To Joelle, may the flow be with you. Always love, Alejandra." Right there. Look how sweet that is. May the flow be with you. Is that kind of like may the force be with you? Are you a Star Wars fan at all, or is that not inspired by that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm a big Star Wars and the Force fan. And also the flow. It's just, life is just so easy when you feel you're in flow and it makes you feel powerful. So, of course, that reminded me of the teachings of Yoda.
Mm. There's a book. I have this book. It's a shade of blue. It's Mikhail something, and it's called Flow. And it's about the science. I think the term flow that everyone is familiar with came from um, this guy's research. So he came out with this book called Flow, and then it became a term that everyone used for having doing something you love, reaching a high state of awareness. Flow is where time stands still. You hear Beyonce saying, 18 hours later, I had been recording, and 18 hours later, I realized, hey, I haven't even eaten today. Like, that's a flow state. And they say whatever gets you into a flow state is a good indication that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So that's what I think about when I hear flow. So uh, where did the inspiration come from to write a book? I mean, not everyone, most people don't write or release books. So where did the inspiration come from, and how did you choose this topic specifically? I mean, you have all these passions and all these strengths. Why this one?
Well, remember we talked back about my childhood and the certainty that I was going to leave Mexico and I didn't know what that was going to look like. There were other two certainties inside of me. The second one was that I would not have children. And I just knew at 9 years old, I knew. So whenever I was misbehaving and my mom would tell me, you'll know when you have your own children, I would say, I'm never having children. And she would reply, you're too young to know that. And I would say, no, I'm not. Anyways, that's proven true. And it was just something inside of me. I knew that was going to be my choice, or it was already predetermined. It can come in many forms, right? In this life. And the third one was that I was going to write a book. Whether it was the knowing or the wanting, it was there since I was very young, probably between the age of 9 and 12. Now, the years went by. I became an adult. I went to school, I graduated, became an adult, started living a young adult life, and time went by and it seemed like it was never going to happen. So inside of me, a worry, a stress, a heaviness started building, a conflict started building. And I often use the realization of how short my life is just compared to eternity to become aware of what is truly important in my life and what I need to do. So I would fast forward to my deathbed, if you want to put it that way, and thinking at that moment what I would regret. And not writing a book came up to me. So I knew I needed to happen. And I remember at some moment in time, I wrote in my journal, because I've had journals since I was very young as well. And I have them with me. I just pulled them in a big box the other day. There's like 20 of them. Um, I had written 10 things that needed to happen for me in list form, that needed to happen for me to know that it was time to write a book. And so I went and I performed on stage where I did a painting live similar to this. And I did Animal Flow in an event called Awaken Your Wisdom by one of my friends. And I decided to stay and listen to the speakers there. And one of the speakers was my publisher, Raymond Aaron. And I could not believe my ears because his program is called the 10-10-10 program. And he described the 10 guarantees of the program. And in my mind, I remember that journal page that I had written like 6 years before, and I started putting imaginary checks on it. And I couldn't believe what was happening in that moment was exactly what I asked for. Sort of like The Secret, the law of manifestation. It was happening right there. So I had no doubt in my mind. I even thought in my head what amount of money I would be comfortable in investing on creating my book, and it was very similar to what the program looked like. So I signed up right away, no hesitation. That was the day my brother also joined me in this adventure, and I started writing my book. And I I thought it was going to be about working out and the understanding of the human body, but it turned out to be it's more a mind frame, because without the certainty in the mind that you are ready to do something, the body will not be compliant. So it has contains aspects of NLP, context contains aspects of the universe, but integrated in a way that I want my reader to have a journey where they rediscover themselves in an unknown and fascinating way.
Yeah, I think everything comes down to mindset. Success or achieving goals or any of those things, everything comes down to mindset, because it's, your body will do a workout, but it's your mind that has to tell it that, hey, we got to do this. We got to do this workout. Here's why we're doing it. You got to sacrifice in the present, to gain in the future. You have to make like a sacrifice to your future self. I'm familiar with Raymond Aaron, so I went to
Okay.
one of his seminars before. We're Facebook BFFs. What was there was some competition, wasn't there, between you and your brother? You both decide you're going to write a book on the same day. And you're both writing it and bouncing ideas off of each other. Was there a little bit of sibling rivalry, a little bit of competition that pushed you both to write better books?
Oh, well, I am 2 years older than my brother. 2 years and one day, like to the
The one
day.
day is important. You gotta,
Somehow, right?
yeah.
2 years. So he's March 20th, I'm March 21st, 2 years apart. And, I've always been the pathfinder, the streamliner, the one at the front with the decisions. I moved first to Canada, then he moved to another area, then he moved to where I am. I was the one that wanted to write a book, decided to write a book. He probably showed so much energy, passion, something resonated inside of him. We signed up together. Up to the first 6 months, I was ahead in the game. I'm a competitive person too, as you can see. I was ahead of the game, and we kept. It was so amazing driving to work in the mornings to the gym and having 15-minute conversations with him, exchanging ideas. And then I stopped myself. I got distracted. I encountered some personal demons. Life took me in other directions. And all of a sudden, within the year, he said, Alex, my book is about to be printed. And and then,
How dare
yeah,
you, sir?
how dare you?
You slow down right now.
But you know what happened? There was a bit of my world was shifted. I felt a bit of a conflict and ego inside of myself, because I've always been the leader, the big sister, the one telling him what to do. And then as I sorted through that, I realized the gift in this. Now I could relax. I could let him be the big brother and guide me, assist me into finishing my book. So that is how I turned that around. I released those negative emotions that I was feeling towards my lovely little brother. And
Poor
he
guy.
literally, yeah, he literally became my big brother and guided me and assisted me through some blocks that I encountered later on as I was about to publish my own. So very thankful for that experience of contrast, eh?
How has the response been for the book so far, and has it opened any new doors for you? Have any opportunities present themselves? Any amazing moments that have come out of the book being out?
Oh, yes, certainly. So there is an expectation built on the unknown, obviously, that I had of what being a published author was going to look like. And it has not been anything like that, but it has been magical in so many other ways. I had the chance to teach an online class, an online art class to a group of 15 young creators that these are the seeds of the new world, and that was thanks to my book opened the door for that connection, for that opportunity to present itself. There's been a couple other invitations for me, projects, and it's just having a book. It's not something that, like you said, a lot of people have done or will do in their lives. One thing is wanting to do it, and another thing is making it happen. But it has sort of branded me as an authority, as someone with a level of mastery, certain mastery in who I am, what I do, and the achievements that I've done with my clients. And I have to say that the most heart fulfilling experiences that I've had from my book is hearing of close friends of mine that I knew they didn't read at all, that they have read my book. So that is a
That means a lot. They
it,
made the effort, right?
uh,
It's not, it doesn't come easy to them.
no, but that they made it through my book, that's a big source of compliment. Seeing so the
And it's not, it's not the easiest read. So not saying it's hard to read or not well written, but it's not like it's like a kid's book with lots of pictures. I mean, you're diving deep into some heavy stuff.
Yes, well, you can tell me about your experience because I'm so curious about it too. And I've also received messages from 3 people that they've said, because of what has happened in the past year, that this book was a light in their life, and that they had been stuck for a long time, and thanks to the book they had a breakthrough in their life, and they're full of purpose now, and it's the beginning of another journey. So that to me is the highest form of a compliment as well.
You write about short circuiting the brain. What does that mean?
Well,
And when I ask these questions, I might have an understanding, but I'm asking on behalf of the listeners that maybe didn't read the book.
oh, absolutely. So inside of our biology, we have two contrasting aspects. We have the prefrontal cortex, which is the higher, newest function of human consciousness, the development of the brain, the human brain, which has to do with imagination, foresight, the ability to set goals, to see it gets stimulated with open, white spaces and with the thought of a bright possible future and hope. And then we also, inside of the same brain, we have the amygdala, which is part of, ancient form of brain, of the human brain, connected to the reptilian form of life.
That's the one that'll get you.
Oh yeah, it's the one that gets triggered with change. So, you're stuck in between the two. One is like the accelerator in a car. It wants to press the pedal, move forward. It gets excited with new opportunities. And the other one is pressing the brake. It's like, no, change is scary. React, act. And there's, the one that triggers the emotions of fear or fight or flight. So short circuiting the brain is it's when you think you might be going crazy, but the truth is that both areas are firing at the same time, and you find yourself stuck in the middle in a loophole of hell, much like what I have seen myself and a lot of my clients during this year, right? Because there's so much contrast happening. Mm-hmm.
You have a chapter on successful shapeshifters. What is a shapeshifter? What is your definition of a shapeshifter when it comes to personal growth?
Shapeshifter, whether in physical or in mental form, is the ability to adapt and recreate yourself in a way to master your environment, or master the change, or master the circumstances that are coming into your experiences. Your question was about business. Sorry.
Personal growth. So
Personal.
like when people think of shapeshifters, they think of like superheroes or something that can actually shapeshift. So just when it comes to what you're talking about in the book, what do you mean by shapeshifter? It's not a physical human that turns into a dragon or something, right? So
Well, you can do that through animal flow. That's the physical aspect of
that's true.
shapeshifting.
That's true.
Yes. But when it comes to personal growth, it means the ability of someone to let go of that which no longer serves them, to step into a new version of themselves. And shape-shifting happens, even it's happening right now by you and me having this conversation, by you, my listener, listening to this conversation. There are things inside your mind that are already shape-shifting, that are shifting, that are opening up to new ways of looking at things. And at a higher level, shape-shifting, and you Joel, you're a big advocate of mastery. At a higher level, it's having spent enough time within a practice or a concept, or even a business that maybe someone is developing right now, spend the necessary amount of time learning the necessary amount of lessons, so that that shape shifting becomes assembled into that new serving version of the self, or the piece of artwork, or the business that someone is building.
You mentioned something that might help everyone sleep better at night. What is that?
Ah, it is the you know it's it there are things that keep you and me and you, my listener, awake at night.
There sure is. There are
There
lots of
are.
things. Yeah.
And if you strip those things out of the story, you're going to notice that it's conflict. And it is as simple as colors that are too much contrast, or they're all murky and muddy, and you cannot. So, this is the biggest form of abstraction to what we're talking about. It is called conflict. It is called opposing forces.
Chaos and order, yin and yang.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a universal experience. But when a person is experiencing it at night and they cannot sleep, it just becomes so personal. And I have been in there, and I have felt like I am the only human in the world experiencing that, and no one could possibly understand me. So the chapter of my book, How to Sleep Better at Night, is based on the understanding that reality is individual. Even though you could be sitting in the same room with another person, and if someone you love, like me and my brother, could be sitting in the same room, and we agree on a lot of things, and that is possibly why we are very best friends, very good friends. The reality that him and I are experiencing is completely different, because no one else in this universe could have possibly had all the experiences, all the thoughts, all the emotions that you've had. So if you understand that whatever conflict you're experiencing, it probably involves another human being, agree to disagree. Probably the source of the conflict is they are experiencing their reality in their own unique way. You are experiencing reality in your own unique way. And out of there, you can enter a state of empathy and understanding and compassion, and have different conversations. Step out of the conflict, step out of the story, and look at it as that's just a thing. It is how it is. Conflict arises because reality is individual.
Can you talk to our listeners about self-fulfilling prophecies, about the ego, about the subconscious mind? I know that's a lot. Each of those three could be an hour-long episode, but maybe just a little bit about those three. They're all a part of a specific chapter in your book.
Yes, absolutely. Ego, that's one of my, I love that topic. And me and my brother, by the way, often disagree on how we define the ego. Again, reality is individual. Ego, it's been, it's been described as a bad thing. Ego is your enemy. I think there is a book on that as well.
Are you sorry? Are you? I know that Rodrigo is close with James McNeil, who's been a guest. He's the first ever guest on this podcast, so inspirational speaker and best-selling author. Are you familiar with James McNeil as well?
Yes, I am.
So he says, he says ego is not your amigo, and he says ego is edging God out if you are religious. So, anyways, I thought I would throw those in when you talk about ego.
Oh, absolutely. And I've attended his one of his seminars, his weekend seminar as well. And fascinating also to hear him and explore that concept of ego, not your amigo, right?
Yeah.
Um, I had to come to my understanding of ego. And to me, ego is not a bad thing. It is an expression of the uniqueness of individuals. So to me, the ego is a part of the consciousness that wants to perceive itself separate from you, separate from him or her, from them. Because my personality as Alejandra Diaz Mercado is tied to that separatedness. There can only be one Alejandra Diaz Mercado. There can only be one of me who has painted the paintings that I've made, written the book that I have. So to me, the ego is that separated part of you, part of the collective, right? To put it that way. And so when it goes into darkness, the ego is self-serving, it's individualistic, it's aggressive, and it will try to protect what it thinks is in danger of being stolen. And we can talk about clear examples of that, right? So there is an ego in balance. It is an ego in balance is me being me, expressing my gifts, sharing them with you for you to experience. And there is the ego out of balance, me, that's saying, oh, how could my brother write his book first? How is that possible? There is the light and the dark of the ego self. So yeah, I love and yeah, the discussion of the ego, and then rising above that in the realization that there is this, the same way inside your body there is fascia, there is this interconnectedness of all that there is outside of you and I. There is a fascia of the universe that connects us, and it's almost like you and I are cells of this human collective consciousness. So you can rise above that individuality of I am Alejandra to I am one with my world, with the world that I have consciousness on, right? Different aspects of separation and integration. Now,
Yeah, no, you talked about your gift within talking about ego. You talked about your gift a little bit, and I actually just watched a little inspirational video from Steve Harvey, the comedian, and he said your gift is what you do absolute best with the least amount of effort. Your gift will make room for you and put you in the presence of great people. So that came to mind when you talked about your gift. So that's ego. Did you want to dive into self-fulfilling prophecies as well?
yes.
I know it's a lot. Like that's three completely separate topics, and I lumped them all together like an amateur.
Yeah. Well, self-fulfilling prophecies is the concept of the question that has plagued humanity for a long time, that breaks even the most in the most intelligent minds. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Right? Is there such a thing as destiny, fate, things that are written, meant to happen? Or are you and I creating that together simply by talking about the future? In the same way, an individual, if you think, or if I think I'm stupid, and then I continue to behave and look for evidence that I am stupid and I have nothing to give to the world, I'm going to end up in the couch watching Netflix for the rest of my life, right? And that is a self-fulfilling prophecy that started with the belief that I was stupid.
Hmm.
But if I believe that I have a book in me, a second book, and I believe that I have this gift of creating art, and I have to create that art because if I don't create it, no one else will, then it is sort of like prophesizing my future. if I stay in line and I pay attention to that, then I'm going to write my own future. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's sort of the concept.
What is the role that emotions play in someone's life? I read a book, so I went through some tough times. I had in a short period of time, I had a best friend that passed away. I had a grandpa that passed away. I had a long-term relationship that ended. So, like you, I ended up in a dark place. And I read a few books, and one of them talked a lot about emotions. And I didn't think that I was a very emotional person. I was very steady, didn't really get angry or happy. I was just kind of steady. I was that rock. And the book kind of opened my eyes on emotions, that your emotions are a way for your body to communicate with you. So if you're feeling a certain way, it's telling you you're on the right path or you're not on the right path. And that was really eye opening to me, is that it's a form of communication to yourself. So that's my foundation I'll start with for emotions.
That is the best way to describe it, Joel, and it is a solid foundation on understanding emotion and pain. And you are aware that you have a conscious and a subconscious or unconscious mind, right? There is this part of you that you can call intuition, you can call higher self, you can call God force. There are very different labels that people use to access that unknown part of consciousness. And so how is that part of you going to communicate with you? It has no words. It the conscious mind, humans have words, but this other aspect, it only knows symbols, emotions, and pain to get your attention, to give you messages. So emotions are, the first time I came across this concept in such a way was through the book Becoming Supernatural, Joe Dispenza. He
He's awesome.
describes, yes, in that book caused a major breakthrough in my life, um, a chain of breakthroughs, in fact. He describes emotion as energy in motion. And that became the inspiration for the
Mm.
title of my book. So if if you and I were to wake up tomorrow stripped of emotions, you would either be an incredible, efficient computer, just completing all your tasks, uploading, changing, clean the house, you'd be incredibly efficient. And then you'll do it all over again the next day, all over again the next day. Or you wouldn't get out of bed because there is always an energy of motivation, motive, and action that moves the human being to do or not do things, and that is emotion.
Why do you believe that empathy is a superpower?
Because in the realization that reality is unique to everyone, to you, to me, to you, the listener, empathy allows the creation of a bridge, the creation of me in my planet, Alejandra, understanding, traveling through the bridge to understand you, Joel, in your planet, Joel, and talk about your experience of reality and my experience of reality. So empathy is that neutral ground where you and I can understand each other. So it is a superpower because it is what brings people together.
I had always struggled with empathy. I had always lacked empathy. Uh, when I was younger, you talked about going through, the dark stages and the depression, and you're now, you're in a way better place now and things are good. Still saying that you appreciate that period of time and that you wouldn't have changed it because it shaped who you are now. Um, when I went through the dark times over the last few years, I found that one of the best things that has come out of it is that I now have empathy for other people because I've gone to the depths of hell. So I understand how horrible that is and what that's like. So people that are currently there, in the past, I was always living up here. Life is great. Let's work. Let's do this. Let's, crush some goals. And when I'd see someone else that is, not getting out of bed and not following through with what they're saying and struggling, I would just think, hey, like, just make a decision. Like, just if you're overweight, make a decision and don't eat that and go work out. And if you're struggling with this, like, just, to me, it's like they brought it on themselves. And what are you doing? Snap out of it. Like, I had no empathy.
Mhm.
And now I get it. Now I get how you can get completely wiped out by certain things that happen in your life, and that not everyone got the same start. I mean, you and I have amazing parents and we had a solid foundation, and we see the world starting with that frame of reference.
Mhm.
And some people are not born with that, and we have no idea the struggle they've been through, and the mindset that they have, where they see the world through a different lens. So I now, in the last couple of years, are starting to believe that empathy is a superpower, and that I'm definitely a better person now that I have empathy.
That is, yes. Thank you for sharing that, Joel. I went through my share of understanding too, because much like you, I was on a path succeeding, and it wasn't until I tapped into those dark hells within me that I had the ability to recognize darkness in others when another person was experiencing darkness, and darkness and negative emotions often want to be recognized once, at least. Well, some of them have energies that they want to be perpetuated. So empathy is a superpower also, in the sense that you can say, I know you're in pain, I understand that you're in darkness, and however it appears, it could be grief, rage, other forms of negative emotions, and have the ability to hold space for someone else without perpetuating or feeding that negative emotion or that negative state, so that a person can step out of it, right? Because there's a difference between being there for someone or feeding that negative state or perpetuating it and not allowing the person to get out of it. So yeah, yeah.
So we're talking about your book. We've talked about other books like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Uh, are you a big reader yourself? And if so, what are your favorite books of all time? I'm always like, I'm just blasting through books. I just finished 2 books in 2 days, always looking for more. So do you have any all-time favorite books that you would recommend? I'm
Well,
in an empty house, man. I need books. That's all I got left here to kill the time before Thursday when I move.
Well, let me tell you, I like the idea of books more than I like reading them. I like touching them. I like walking into bookstores and looking at them. But ever since I met you last year, you've reignited my love in all its levels for books. So I've started reading again. So thank you, Joel, for that.
Amazing. Amazing.
Um, to my listener, to you, Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. If you haven't already read that, I know you have, but possibly some of our listeners haven't. That is a powerful book because it it bridges the gap between spirituality and science. It That was the most reassuring thing for me. I've always seen spirituality as a mathematical method, like it's a certainty, like there's a method and a system behind it. It's not just all woo woo and magic and, oh, I hear voices. No, no, no. There is a reason for that, and Joe Dispenza manages to start putting those foundations that our society needs to grow in understanding of these things that happen that we cannot see, but it's just because we have five senses that see in a very small spectrum of reality. I have to say, I have a confession for you, Joel.
I love it. It's just between you and I, and if thousands of people end up hearing it, then
I
it is what
love,
it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
I keep it a secret for me, okay?
I won't say anything, but the audio and video might get out there.
We'll deal with that later. I love to drown myself in fantasy and science fiction. So that is my go to. Right now, I started reading the Witcher books after I watched the series. but I find that the characters are not too intellectually or emotionally developed in those first books. So I'm like, maybe I'm gonna go back to Dragonlance or Animorphs, some of the books that shaped my childhood, because I find that reading them right now, my mind is getting blown away because it's almost like they have self-fulfilling prophecies. And reading them just right now in the context of how the last 10 years of my life, the last couple of years have gone, I'm like, whoa, someone here that wrote it in a fantasy book knew what was happening, what was really happening. So, Einstein is a big advocate of imagination, because nothing new can be created if there is no imagination. Imagination is stepping into the invisible, and science is sometimes perpetuating what we know, right? The physical world. We know the physical world comes after the invisible world. It had to be conceived in the mind of someone else to exist, like a chair. A chair is a chair because someone envisioned the chair, right? So, yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. I don't have other than Becoming Supernatural, so simple recommendation. My book, of course, I recommend you, my listener, to read the book. I wrote it with the intention of it being a journey for you to rediscover your world in an unknown way, in a way that awes you and makes you wonder and makes you ask deeper questions about your own life experiences, your own consciousness, and the power that you have. So, yes,
Mm.
other than that, my favorite book is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Hepfnager. I think I'm saying it right. And again, the whole concept of time travel fascinates me.
So I have a couple confessions just because
Oh,
we're in the trust tree now, so I can say anything.
crystal
So
trust.
so I read Time Traveler's Wife last year. That's like a classic. I have not read Becoming Supernatural, but I read his other book, The Art of Overcoming Yourself, or something like that. He has another popular book. Um, anyways, I think your brother's read Becoming Supernatural as well, right? He's a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Uh,
Mhm.
the the science fiction book. So recently, I've read Ender's Game, Dune, Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, and Ready Player One. All four of those, if you're a science fiction or fantasy fan, those are worth picking up for sure.
Awesome.
You talked about about Einstein and about uh, inspiration and creativity. We're both creative people. I mean, you're an artist and a painter and a writer, and you're creative even in your fitness stuff, which shows how creative you are. For me, again, a writer and a musician, and I used to draw when I was younger. It's probably something I should do, but I've just stopped. So why is it important that everyone has an outlet for creativity? And your brother talked about childlike wonder, about recapturing that childlike wonder. Why is it important that everyone has some outlet for creativity?
Um, so I'm thinking some of our listeners are going to meet this with resistance, because we have been taught what creative should look like. Like creative should look like as creating music or doing a painting or writing a book. But that is not my definition of creative outlet. My definition, and this, you, my listener, are gonna love this. My definition is play. How do you like to play? Do you like to make fancy tea? Do you like to walk in nature and observe, the trees, the squirrels, the right now we're in a season that everything's about to flourish, right? Do you like to be creative, just imagining other worlds in your mind, or in how you pack your kids lunches, um, or in reinventing yourself? It's play. It's a state of, let yourself be stripped of what you've been told what to do, of how you should live your life, and just be you. Like, just take a deep breath. Sometimes being creative is sitting in a couch and staring at a wall and just letting things be. So, I believe that it's important for everyone to have a creative outlet, because that allows the mind to shut up and take a deep breath and realize that you are alive, and that on itself is magical. And after that realization comes a light, an intention from inside to do something with that and share it with your environment or with the people you love, or even just create it in your own room for yourself, for the joy of creating. So those are some of the outer, if you were to throw a pebble in a pond, some of the outer ripple effects of creative outlet. At the beginning, it's simply the realization that you are in full control of your life, and you can allow yourself that space to just be you and calm down.
So I believe that this has officially become the longest podcast episode that we've ever had. Normally it's about an hour, sometimes an hour and 10. We've done about an hour and a half already, which is awesome because getting some great answers from you and offering a lot of value. Are you okay for 3 more rapid fire questions? I got 3 questions I got to ask. So
Let's do it. I had a feeling you and I could talk for hours.
okay, awesome. So you know, life is up and downs, your peaks and valleys. Not every day is going to be great. So, what do you do when you find yourself in a rut? What do you do to snap out of it as quickly as possible? So you're not stuck in a horrible place for a month or for 2 weeks when you could maybe give yourself an hour, give yourself a few minutes, and there's something that you know you can do to get out of that dark place.
I First of all, I've given up trying to snap out of it. I
Cool.
recognize that it's a natural part of growth. You have to break down, step into darkness and turmoil, because it is in that state that you get to ask yourself the tough questions. You get to see things in ways like a Rubik's Cube. You get to turn it all over looking for answers as you're looking to snap out of it, but you get to ask things that you hadn't asked before. So everything falls apart. And once you start seeing sparkles of light there, start getting some answers. You can start stepping like it's a staircase, one step at a time. You can't I can't make myself go from anxiety to peace. That's too big of a jump, but I can make myself go from anxiety to a workout that is similar in vibration. So instead of just feeling the anxiety inside of me, all that trapped energy that seems to me like it wants to do something, I would go out for a walk, and I'm actually using my body to process that vibration that was inside of me not doing anything, and I get it moving. And then from there I change states. So sometimes there are, like, I just came out of a 2 weeks of, I don't know, I couldn't even recognize myself, but I was the observer not recognizing myself. And I said, it's just happening, whatever it is. I don't even know what to call that emotion right now. It's a mix of like three. And I just allow myself to have it. I let my husband know. I let the people that I love know that I am going through something, but that I'm okay, and that I'll let them know when I am better. So, and then I don't know, something like I see a bean in the floor of the kitchen, and it makes me smile, and then it makes me laugh. And I know that something has changed, because something as silly as a bean in the floor of the kitchen is making me laugh. So I cling myself up of that positive emotion, and I just laugh at myself, and I realize, how I've been stuck in my own head.
That's a good answer and not what I expected at all, which is awesome, right? So we're 4 months in to the year. Uh, what is your vision for the rest of 2021? And have you set any specific goals to get you excited, get you out of the bed in the morning, ready to tackle the day?
I had set some exciting goals, which had to do with building my website, my network, doing, you know, not lectures, but just jumping online and reading my book and creating a book club. And then I was finding so much resistance inside of me with some of those goals that I decided to scratch off my year. So right now it's an empty canvas. I I realized that I needed time to process and heal and some of the changes that I've experienced over the last year. And I am in like idle mode. I am very open, very empathic to the people around me reaching out. So, for example, when you reached out to me, it sparked excitement inside of me, and that's how I knew I had to meet with you and get together and film this podcast. But other than that, when it's coming to me with myself and my own goals, I think this is a year where I needed to erase everything and create space. So I was already perpetuating my past reality. I was already doing things that I said I wouldn't do anymore. So I needed to create a boundary with myself, wipe the year clean. And that let me tell you, as a perfectionist, that's a very uncomfortable place to be. But there is another part of me that started to flourish. I still don't know what that looks like. So I scratch my year out.
See, the rest of your year is currently an empty canvas, but the good news is you're an artist, so you know what to do with empty canvases, and you know how to turn an empty canvas into something beautiful. So I don't worry when you say I have an empty canvas for the rest of the year. Everything will come to fruition. It'll reveal itself in time. I have one more question for you. Are you ready for a final question?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to go back in time to your 10-year-old self. So you'd be back in Mexico at that point, right? 10 years old. So I
Mm-hmm.
want you to go back to your 10-year-old self in Mexico. If you could whisper in your ear, so your current self whispering in the ear of your 10-year-old self, words of advice. So you've had all these years now of experience and growth and learning and mentorship and trials and tribulations. With everything you've learned from 10 years old to where you are now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Wow. I would say, dear 10-year-old Alejandra, and you know that you know, but others don't know yet. So be kind and compassionate, especially to your mom, because she'll know in about 20 years. Be kind of compassionate to those who you meet who become shocked or scared by just who you are, and keep just have fun because you are in it for a hell of a ride. Very exciting, and everything that you've thought was going to happen is going to become true. So just have fun. Stop being so perfectionist.
Amazing. That's good advice. So, hey, thank you for your time. It's been amazing. It's been an awesome hour and a half plus. Got a lot of golden nuggets. I think this will help a lot of people out. So thank you. And for all our listeners, guys, thank you for hopping on this episode, joining us today. That was Alejandra Diaz Mercado. I just want to say it one more time to have it roll off the tongue. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Alejandra. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you, Joel. And I just want to share that you can find my book in energyinmotionbook.com and on social media at Ale Diaz with a Z, me. And you can find me on Instagram, and I love to connect and interact. So I'll see you there.
Amazing. I always forget to ask for the social media stuff at the end, even though I have a big note here to do it. So thank you for catching that. And we'll see everyone on the next episode.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.